You're listening to Making the Cut, the mostly true life story of a retired surgeon from 1C Productions.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Seitz, founder and president of 1C Productions. This episode contains explicit language and adult content. It is intended for mature audiences only.
Amazingly, very few doctors think that they can become sick. It's perhaps as strange as expecting to find oneself pregnant. But at times of need, you have to help a friend.
Gradually, I noticed that it took me longer and longer to admit, clerk, and prepare the same number of patients. I felt listless. Plugging along became an insurmountable effort. One night, after finishing my tasks and preparing patients for the next day's surgery, I dragged myself to casualty. Sheila examined me. I had a high fever, an overwhelming sore throat with extensive ulcers in my mouth and throat, preventing me from swallowing, tender swollen lymph glands under my chin and in my neck, and a tender spleen in my abdomen. She pronounced that I had acute glandular fever, infectious mononucleosis, commonly occurring in young adults. A blood test confirmed her diagnosis. She admitted me to University College Hospital, where I lay in bed feeling somewhat of a fraud since I wasn't as sick as I thought I should be for hospitalization. The common Epstein-Barr virus, a highly contagious virus belonging to the herpes family, causes infectious mononucleosis. People can be asymptomatic carriers but can transmit it from person to person through their saliva, mainly by kissing. Did Hannah give me this? Had I not only threatened my marriage with my indiscretions, but also my goal of becoming a surgeon, and even my very own health? Friends visited the next morning. They looked at my chart, learning more about my medical status than I did. I instantly understood how vulnerable a patient must feel when I asked intrusive questions about their health and wrote the answers, basically a spectre of their self on paper. The next afternoon, Sheila discharged me to home. I longed for my own bed. More than that, though. I longed for the comforting presence of Victoria. Perhaps, like Omar of my childhood, she would see that I took the medicines on time and feed me sustenance that equipped my body for healing. I arrived to an empty flat. I took to bed overwhelmed by the sore throat, fatigue, fever, chills, and total body aches. My GP, Dr. B, made a house call to follow up on my health. He urged me to drink fluids, stay hydrated, get plenty of rest, and take a couple of aspirin every 4 hours for pain and fever. My illness came at a most inopportune time for my beloved. Victoria was in the end run of preparations for her final medical school exams. She was seldom home during the day. Given the pressure she was under, she did her best playing Florence Nightingale, making sure I had lots of fluids to drink, something light to eat, and plenty of aspirin before she left each morning. I missed her each day, wanting her hand in mine or her presence in the room when I awoke throughout the day. Selfish of me. Maybe this was my penance for Hannah. There was no way I could let Hannah know I wasn't working but sick in bed. She must have wondered why I wasn't contacting her. Mother, too, was unable to be present. I didn't know if she was even in the country, What penance could that be? I didn't count on her anymore. I slept most of the day and, when I remembered, drank as much Ribena, a black currant-based soft drink, as I could. I ate little, noticing for the first time the loss of appetite with illness. My trousers became loose about my waist. It occurred to me that the whole issue of anorexia with illness was relevant in surgical recovery. Finding little to read about this observation in my textbooks, I wondered if an examination of the metabolic mechanism offered an opportunity for future research. Dr. Moore's casual mention that the rotation in Boston might include time in the lab came to mind. I still hoped he would offer me a job. My appetite gradually returned as I recovered, and so did my weight. However, my fatigue persisted. Bored at home, I gladly returned to work, despite lingering lassitude and early-onset fatigue. Desmond helped me out with my chores. Where would I be without him? Toward mid-December, the sun rose late, and the workday started in darkness. Dusk settled over drizzly, grey London as the day's toil wound down. Bright Christmas lights decorated the shopping streets, and storefronts burst with seasonal cheer. Victoria's medical school planned their witty annual pantomime, The Pied Piper, a parody of the staff at Westminster Hospital. She played a leading role opposite Andrew in one skit. Styled after a musical, the songs were original compositions with lyrics like, "Last night I had a nurse so fast my pubic hair caught fire." The songs all had elements of salaciousness and infidelity. How was it that my wife, the woman who would not even allow me to see her nude body in the bathing tub, was comfortable with these lyrics? Why did her ease not extend from the stage to our relationship? The evenings that she stayed late to rehearse made me uneasy. At home, she repeatedly rehearsed scenes where she and Andrew were together. His name reverberated about our tiny flat. Andrew this, and Andrew that. Throughout the rehearsal weeks and the night of the 3 performances, her mood was different, lighter, more vivacious, like the Victoria I first knew but had not seen since our wedding. I wondered if I could do something to make this Victoria stay. Or had I done something to make this Victoria leave in the first place? Regardless, I didn't like being displaced even for a brief moment by Andrew. Victoria acted out her fantasy on the stage, while the other me lived it in secret. Out of the blue one day, I received a call from Magdalena.
Hi, it's me.
How nice to hear from you. How are you, and more importantly, where are you?
I've been helping an elderly businessman, translating for him as he has business meetings and writes contracts. It's okay, but we've been to several countries, Thailand, Australia, Singapore. Quite an extensive trip. He pays well and it's fun.
Fun? She was having fun with this man. My heart hurt.
I have a problem, and I need your help. If I come to Brussels via London, can you help me?
You know I'll try. What do you need? Magdalena's problem needed more help than I alone could give. I turned to Desmond as we wound down a conversation over another scrumptious curry. I have an old friend who contacted me. She was my heartthrob when I was a teenager in Cairo. Now she works as a freelance translator, Polish to English. She's been helping an elderly businessman while traveling with him in Asia. She's in a spot of trouble. He sat across from me, sensing my discomfort. He tried to hide the faint grin of recognition that crossed his face behind his folded hands, But we smile with our eyes, our lips just show it. He knew where the story was going. He knew the end. Can we help her? Suspicion morphed to understanding as he realized that I was trying to help a friend out of loyalty. I was not paternally involved.
I'll give you a telephone number in Harley Street tomorrow.
And how does she pay? He waved his hand dismissively.
They'll slip her onto the list.
The next day, while doing rounds with the entire team, he slipped me a piece of paper. I waited until I reached the privacy of my on-call room to unfurl it. Next to the number, he had scribbled,
Ask for Elizabeth and tell her I gave you the number. She'll take it from there. Good luck.
A few days later, on an unusually bright and sunny late afternoon, Magdalena appeared at my door. Victoria had not yet come home. Without a word, Magdalena embraced me hesitantly, uncertain how I'd receive her. Time, distance, and circumstance had not deadened our mutual ardor, and in the fundamental language that humans understand, the inseparable expressions of the human soul, we made love on the carpet, with the sun streaming through the window onto our bare bodies. I loved her in the rage of anger for her disloyalty to me, even though I knew I had no right to such. Her body and spirit answered me with submission and remorse. When it was over, I retrieved the paper Desmond had supplied and gave it to her.
Thank you.
She stopped to look up at me from the landing as she was climbing down the stairs.
Jestem pewna, że zrozumiesz.
Yes, I did understand. She, like me, grew up nurtured by people who were not our parents. Were we loved? Lovable? A gigantic cavern lay in both our souls, yearning for love, acceptance, and recognition. These emotions that bound us so tightly in our youth were now beginning to be tested as we ventured along our separate paths into adulthood. I knew it, even as I lived enslaved to it. I would no sooner turn her away than my own self. She and I had been turned away enough for a lifetime. Victoria came home a few hours later. She looked tired, but as usual I was pleased to see her. And as she crossed the carpet in her stockinged feet, I glanced down to ensure that there was no residual stain of my connection to an old friend. Yes, I understood the past existential wounds that dictated and framed Magdalena's life. I understood, like me, these were mirages that we chased. 4 days later, a postcard from Brussels arrived. She had drawn a smile with a note.
Dziękuję ci.
You're welcome, my friend. Toward the end of my 6-month rotation, Mr. Kingdom asked if I'd like to assist him doing a laryngectomy, removal of the voice box for cancer, on Saturday in the private wing. The venue immediately told me that this was a patient from his Harley Street practice, and not one using the National Health Service. I felt complimented. In his eyes, I had made the surgical grade, and could attend to his private patients. We met in the operating theatre of the private wing the next morning. The anaesthetist sat at the head of the operating table and had already put the patient under, controlled by a respirator while he read the Times. To my surprise, I was Mr. Kingdom's only assistant. Typical of Mr. Kingdom's expertise, he operated swiftly, the nurse passing him the appropriate instruments, while I assisted in retracting skin flaps and the 3 extrinsic muscles that support and position the larynx and the neck in order to ensure a clear visual field. We worked in silence, in an intense and focused surgical pas de deux around the patient's neck. I liked operating in silence, for it helped me concentrate. By late morning, after we had removed the larynx, he excused himself and stepped out of the theater to what I presumed was to go and pee. On his return, he seemed agitated and preoccupied, and had lost his focus and concentration. Something was bothering him. Perhaps he had made a disturbing phone call. As he commenced to close the wound, he started putting stitches through the approximated skin flaps. I wondered if this was a different technique of managing this operation. I watched in surprise for a couple of stitches, weighing whether to say anything. Dare I risk speaking up? It did not go well the last time. But since then I'd spent time in America at Mass General, a place where every member of the surgical team, no matter their status, was responsible for the patient's welfare. They taught by example that if a procedure doesn't look right, speak up, regardless of the possibility of humiliation and shame if you're wrong. He closed the second stitch. Aren't you going to close the 3 underlying muscle layers? He looked up and stared into my eyes. I saw the moment he realized his error. His eyes widened in terror.
Good God! He'd have blown his neck wide open and died on taking his first breath.
He cut out the skin sutures and started to close the underlying muscle layers. His focus had returned. I continued to assist. Feeling glad I'd had the confidence to speak out about my surgical concern, and happy that my helpful question was well received, I was surprised when in the changing room the boss slipped me a £5 note. I wavered. Seeing his face at my vacillation, I realized this was not fee-splitting, but a gesture of gratitude. By speaking up, I saved his patient's life, spared him an investigation, and perhaps the demise of his private practice. I took the money and nodded. Walking home, I recognized that challenging authority, in this case my surgical superior, hadn't been easy, but I had done it. My self-worth had been beaten up during my early years by Opa the autocrat, subsequently by Father the perfectionist, and more recently by Rosenheim the rotter. When it came to surgery, though, I had overcome the elements of poor self-esteem and possible embarrassment and spoken up to Mr. Kingdom. On this head and neck rotation, I had gained the buoyancy to pick up the knife myself and cut another human not to harm, but to heal. As a budding surgeon, my words and my actions mattered. I saw my mentors, Professor Pilcher and Mr. Kingdom, as Imhotep, the ancient Egyptian god of medicine, or as Hippocrates, the Greek physician. They fired my determination to become a healer and a surgeon. I floated home along Euston Street. Finally, after so many years of anguish, just maybe I was growing up and leaving my disturbed upbringing behind. As Desmond foretold, the letter from the General Medical Council arrived. I was now registered as a medical practitioner in the United Kingdom. What a feeling! As a registered medical practitioner, I could place the acronym MBBS in addition to LMSSA, the Diploma Licentiate in Medicine and Surgery of the Society of Apothecaries, after my name on the stationery. I chose only the former. Despite father boasting of his 2 PhDs, he could not match me in the medical field. I would not stop there, though. I planned to outstrip him in recognition. I aimed to become a surgeon and have the acronym FRCS or FACS, Fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons, or, if I got the chance to train in America, Fellow of the American College of Surgeons. We did not celebrate the arrival of my letter. Victoria, too, passed her finals, concluding 5 years of medical school. We did not celebrate her achievement either. As I had the year before, she barely had time to breathe before thrust into fulfilling her 1-year obligatory house jobs. Her first 6 months were to be at Westminster, doing a pediatric house job, then 6 months as a casualty officer in lieu of a surgical house officer job at Queen Mary's Hospital, Roehampton. She would be living every other night and every other weekend in the hospital. Apart from 2 weeks' holiday, if our schedules didn't synchronize most of the time, we would be like the proverbial 2 ships passing in the night. How would I stand this extensive separation? How could I do this? Be married to the woman of my dreams, yet hardly see her or spend time with her. Is this really what I wanted? What she wanted? Yet it was part of the system, and neither of us had much choice in the matter. We said goodbye with a kiss at the door, Victoria with a small valise in hand. I would miss her. Would she miss me? I looked around our empty flat. We should have taken the time to salute each other's growth. We should have reaffirmed our plans and goals for life together. We should have found the time to go on a much-needed holiday together, somewhere in the sun, where we could lie on a beach and savor each other, rekindle our passion and recapture the feelings we had once for each other. Instead, I picked up a book and started studying for the primary fellowship exam. Maybe Hannah would have some time to see me tomorrow.
Magdalena's plea for help was similar to mine 5 years previously, when the German soldier, a total stranger, helped me get back to Manchester. As I matured, I learned that generosity activates the same reward pathways in the brain that is activated by sex and food. That warm glow we get from helping others, which leads us to feel greater vitality and self-esteem, and also reduces our stress and anxiety. The more generous we are, the more generous others are towards us. Yes, the feeling of empathy and compassion is the rock basis of human interaction and the urge to make the cut for surgeons.
Thanks for listening to this project from 1C Productions, where thought-provoking media comes alive. Be sure to check out other 1C shows like Freevangelic, in which a married couple discuss their walk out of lifelong evangelicalism and into a new way of being. Their search for truth might open doors for you as well. Learn about Freevangelic and other 1C Productions podcasts at just1c.com. That's JUSTONEC.com.
You've been listening to Making the Cut from 1C Productions. Making the Cut was written, produced, and directed by Rebecca Seitz, based on Michael McGead's manuscript, Mastering the Knife. Noah James played Michael McGead. Other roles brought to life by the voice talent of Mila Bridger, Cornell Bunting, and Gareth Rockcliffe. Audio engineering provided by Zisher LLC. Making the Cut theme music by Kyle J. Baker. Learn more at makingthecutpodcast.com.